When you use your phone in Spain without paying roaming charges, or when a website asks for your cookie consent, you're experiencing European law in action. But here's a question that puzzles many. Who actually makes these laws? It's not a simple answer, because the European Union doesn't work like any country you know. There's no single president signing bills, no traditional parliament with full power. Instead, Europe has created something unique, a system that tries to balance the interests of 27 different nations while making decisions that affect 450 million people. Let's unravel this puzzle. To understand how laws are made in Europe today, we need to grasp what the European Union actually is. Unlike the United States, which is a federal country where states have delegated significant power to Washington, the EU is a hybrid creature. It's more than an international organization like the United Nations, but less than a full federation. Member states remain sovereign countries with their own governments, parliaments, and legal systems. They've simply agreed to share decision-making power in specific areas: trade, competition, agriculture, environmental standards, and, increasingly, digital regulation and consumer protection. This means that when you look at who makes laws in Europe, you're really looking at two parallel systems: national laws made by each country's own parliament, and European laws made by EU institutions that apply across borders. The European legislative process involves three main players, often called the institutional triangle. First, there's the European Commission, based in Brussels, which acts as the EU's executive body. It's composed of 27 commissioners, one from each member state, though they're supposed to represent European interests rather than their home countries. Here's the crucial part. Only the Commission can propose new EU laws. Think of it as having the monopoly on legislative initiative. If the Parliament or member states want a new law, they can request it, but the Commission must be the one to draft and formally propose it. This design was intentional, meant to ensure that proposals serve the collective European interest rather than just powerful individual countries. The second player is the European Parliament, the only directly elected EU institution. Every 5 years, citizens across Europe vote for 720 members of parliament, who sit not by nationality but by political ideology. German socialists sit with French and Spanish socialists. Conservatives from Poland work with those from Italy, and so on. The Parliament reviews Commission proposals, suggests amendments, and must approve most laws before they can pass. This is where democratic legitimacy enters the process. However, and this surprises many people, the Parliament cannot write laws from scratch. It can only modify, approve, or reject what the Commission proposes. This limitation makes the EU fundamentally different from national systems, where parliaments typically have full legislative power. The third institution is the Council of the European Union, not to be confused with the European Council or the Council of Europe, because Europe loves confusing names. The Council represents member state governments. Depending on the topic being discussed, different ministers attend. When agriculture is debated, agriculture ministers from all 27 countries meet. For economic policy, finance ministers gather. This is where national interests are defended and negotiated. The Council must also approve legislation, and depending on the policy area, decisions require either unanimity, where every country can veto, or qualified majority voting, where roughly 55% of countries representing 65% of the EU population must agree. This system ensures that larger countries cannot simply impose their will, but also that smaller ones cannot block everything. So how does a law actually get made? Let's follow a real example: the abolition of roaming charges. For years, European travelers were frustrated by enormous phone bills when using their mobiles abroad. A German visiting France might pay 50 times more for a call than at home. The Commission identified this as a barrier to the single market and proposed regulation to gradually reduce, then eliminate these charges. The proposal went simultaneously to the Parliament and the Council. In the Parliament, the Committee on Industry and Telecommunications examined the text, held hearings with telecom companies and consumer groups, and proposed amendments. Meanwhile, in the Council, telecommunications ministers from member states debated whether the proposal would harm their national telecom industries. Some countries with smaller markets worried their companies would lose revenue. This is where the real work happens, in what's called the trialogue. Representatives from the Commission, Parliament, and Council meet behind closed doors to negotiate a compromise. The Parliament might want roaming charges eliminated immediately, while the Council prefers a gradual approach to protect telecom companies. The Commission mediates, suggesting middle ground solutions. After months of negotiation, they reached agreement. Roaming charges would be phased out by June 2017, with safeguards to prevent abuse. Once this compromise text was agreed, both the Parliament and Council voted to approve it. The regulation became law, applying directly in all member states without needing national parliaments to do anything. Since 2017, you can use your phone across the EU as if you were at home. This brings us to a critical distinction in European law: regulations versus directives. A regulation, like the roaming law, applies directly and identically in all member states the moment it enters into force. It's like a uniform rule that everyone must follow exactly. A directive, on the other hand, sets a goal that member states must achieve, but lets them decide how to do it through their own national laws. This flexibility acknowledges that countries have different legal traditions and administrative systems. The deadline for transposing a directive into national law is typically 2 years, though this varies. The General Data Protection Regulation, known as GDPR, illustrates how powerful EU law can be. Proposed by the Commission in 2012, it took 4 years of intense negotiation between Parliament and Council before being adopted in 2016. The regulation established strict rules on how companies collect, store, and use personal data. It gave individuals the right to access their data, to have it deleted, and to know when it's been breached. Because it's a regulation, not a directive, it applied directly across all member states starting May 2018. Companies had to comply with identical rules, whether operating in Ireland or Romania. But here's where it gets interesting. GDPR has had global impact. Because any company serving European customers must comply, American tech giants, Chinese manufacturers, and businesses worldwide have had to adapt. California even modeled its own privacy law on GDPR. This shows how EU legislation can set global standards, a phenomenon called the Brussels effect. Now let's compare this to how laws are made in national systems, because the contrast is striking. In France, the government or members of parliament can propose laws. The text is debated in the National Assembly and Senate, amended and voted on. If approved, the president signs it into law. The process is relatively straightforward, with clear accountability. Citizens know that if they dislike a law, they can vote out the government or their representatives. In the United Kingdom, before Brexit, Parliament was sovereign. It could make any law, change any law, and no other body could override it. The process was transparent, with public debates and clear votes. The EU system is more complex because it must balance national sovereignty with collective decision-making. This creates both strengths and weaknesses. On the positive side, it prevents any single country from dominating. Small nations like Malta or Estonia have a voice that they would never have in purely intergovernmental negotiations. The system also encourages compromise and consensus, leading to more stable, widely accepted laws. The involvement of multiple institutions provides checks and balances. The Commission's technical expertise, the Parliament's democratic legitimacy, and the Council's representation of national interests theoretically combine to produce well-crafted legislation. However, the system has significant drawbacks. It's slow. The GDPR took 4 years from proposal to adoption. The process is opaque. Those trilogue negotiations happen behind closed doors, making it hard for citizens to follow who's deciding what. Accountability is diffused. If you dislike an EU law, who do you blame? The Commission that proposed it? Your government's minister who approved it in the council? Your member of parliament who voted for it? This complexity creates what scholars call a democratic deficit. Citizens feel distant from decision-making, which fuels Euroscepticism and the sense that Brussels is an unaccountable bureaucracy imposing rules on unwilling populations. There's also the question of competence, meaning which level has the power to legislate on what. The EU can only make laws in areas where member states have granted it authority through treaties. These areas have expanded over decades. Initially focused on coal, steel, and trade, EU competence now covers environmental protection, consumer rights, competition policy, and digital regulation. In some areas, competence is exclusive, meaning only the EU can legislate. In others, it's shared, so both EU and national levels can act, though EU law takes precedence if there's conflict. In still other areas, like foreign policy or taxation, member states retain primary control and EU action requires unanimity. This division of powers is constantly debated and renegotiated. Recent years have seen the EU legislate on increasingly sensitive topics. The Artificial Intelligence Act, adopted in 2024, establishes the world's first comprehensive regulation of AI systems, categorizing them by risk level and imposing strict requirements on high-risk applications. The Digital Markets Act targets big tech platforms, requiring them to allow interoperability and prevent self-preferencing. These laws show the EU's ambition to regulate the digital economy, but they also raise questions. Should decisions about AI governance be made at European level, or should countries retain flexibility to develop their own approaches? There's no obvious answer, and different political traditions give different responses. Looking at the current landscape, the EU legislative machine continues to produce dozens of laws each year. Some are technical regulations on product standards or agricultural subsidies. Others, like the climate law committing Europe to carbon neutrality by 2050, are politically significant. The process remains fundamentally the same. Commission proposes, Parliament and Council negotiate and approve. But there's growing pressure for reform. Some want to give the Parliament the right to initiate legislation, making the system more like national democracies. Others want more qualified majority voting in the Council, reducing the ability of individual countries to block progress. Still others argue the EU has overreached and should return powers to member states. What's clear is that the question of who makes laws in Europe doesn't have a simple answer. It's not one institution or one person. It's a complex dance between the Commission's technocratic expertise, the Parliament's democratic representation, and the Council's defense of national interests. It's a system designed to make 27 different countries with different languages, histories, and priorities work together. Sometimes it produces remarkable achievements, like the single market or GDPR. Sometimes it's frustratingly slow and opaque, but it's the system that Europeans have built through decades of treaties and compromises to govern themselves collectively while preserving national diversity. Understanding this system matters because EU laws affect daily life in ways both visible and invisible. The safety standards on the products you buy, the environmental regulations protecting air and water, the consumer rights when you shop online, the data protection when you browse websites, all of these come, at least in part, from European legislation. And as the world becomes more interconnected, as challenges like climate change, digital regulation, and migration cross borders, the question of how to make collective decisions becomes ever more important. The EU's answer, imperfect as it is, represents one attempt to balance national sovereignty with collective action, democracy with efficiency, diversity with unity. I hope this journey through the European legislative process has clarified how laws are actually made in Europe. If you found this analysis helpful and want to explore more questions about how our interconnected world works, subscribe to continue learning together. Activate notifications for future deep dives into geopolitical topics, and share your thoughts in the comments. What aspects of the EU system do you find most interesting or puzzling? Let's keep the conversation going.